Hi, I'm Anna Maria Fiscali, and I'd like to share some of my favorite recipes with you. Growing up in New York, I spent a great deal of time in my family's restaurants. I was always surrounded by food, and I really developed a fondness for cooking. On this video, I'm going to share with you some of the recipes that I enjoy working with that are based in Ayurvedic tradition, vegetarianism, and my personal favorite, vegan baking. Today we'll be making good morning muffins with dairy-free carob chips, orange chocolate agave nectar cupcakes made with a beautiful chocolate mousse topping, dairy-free lasagna rolls, vegan steamed wontons with a side of seared bok choy, pineapple carrot cake with cream cheese frosting, and a really pretty berry compote. I hope that you'll enjoy working with these recipes as much as I've enjoyed putting them together. And remember, healthy food can taste great as well. Let's get started. So what we're making now are the Good Morning muffins. And I just love these muffins because, once again, like most of the recipes that I'll be working with, they're really quite easy to put together. So what you need to do is take a couple of very ripe bananas. The riper the bananas are, the sweeter they're going to be. And you're just going to throw 2 or 3 very ripe bananas right into your mixer. You can use a stand mixer or you can use a handheld with a bowl. I prefer working with a stand mixer. And you just peel them and throw them right on in. So I'm using 3. If you've only got 2 on hand that are ripe, that's fine. And if they're not quite as ripe as mine are today, that's okay. You can still use them. So you're just going to go ahead and mix them up. Okay, now you can also mash your bananas by hand if you haven't got either a stand mixer or a handheld. So everything is going to go into this one bowl. That's why I love this recipe. One of the reasons I love this recipe is it's a one bowl setup, and it's really easy to construct. So what you've got is your 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. You can use light brown sugar or dark brown sugar, whatever you prefer. Your vanilla. And you're going to go ahead and give that a hit with the blender. And while that's mixing up, or once that is mixed up, you're going to take your ground flaxseed. Now we're working with ground flaxseed because this is actually our egg substitute for this recipe. Traditionally, lots of baking techniques for muffins involve eggs. Well, obviously we're working with vegan recipes, dairy-free recipes that have no eggs. But ground flaxseed, which again you can find at all of your grocery stores nowadays, it's very easy to come across, or in your local health food store. Ground flaxseed goes into a little bit of water. And I think the ratio is 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed to 3 tablespoons of water. And I've got this adorable tiny whisk that I love working with, but you can just go ahead and mix it up with a spoon or a fork. You just want to mix that up until it's thick, and it kind of winds up being gelatinous, which is why we love using it as an egg substitute. Okay, so you're just going to go ahead and take that and toss it right on in with all the other ingredients that are already in your mixer. Okay, so now that you've got the wet ingredients combined, you don't have to have a separate bowl with the dry ingredients. That's another thing that's wonderful about working with this. The Good Morning muffins are very easy. So what we've got is our baking soda, baking powder, and sea salt, our nutmeg, and 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, your wheat bran. These muffins are really high in fiber. They're really wonderful. They're great as a snack or as a breakfast. And lastly, our wheat flour. So the other thing to think about when making a lot of these baked goods is many times recipes will say, stir until just combined. Well, they mean it. So you're just going to stir until these wet and dry ingredients are incorporated. If you overdo it, the muffins will wind up being really tough and heavy, which you don't want. Okay, once that's incorporated, we're going to go ahead and work with today vegan carob chips. Now you can use either any dark chocolate that you choose for this recipe. You can use vegan dark chocolate chips if you've got those on hand. You can also take a bar of dark chocolate that is vegan, dairy-free, and whack it up on your cutting board. Or you can go ahead and do what we're doing, which is we're using dairy-free vegan carob chips. And carob chips actually taste a lot like chocolate chips. They're very similar in taste to chocolate. And carob chips are made from the pulp of the carob plant, which is similar to the cocoa plant. It's made from the pulp of the carob tree. So we're just going to go ahead and throw those in. And once again, you're mixing them just to get them incorporated. And that is it. You don't want to overdo it with the mixing. Now the last step is optional. You can leave this out if you choose to. I'm using 1 tablespoonful of canola oil. And I'm just going to go ahead and put that in. It does yield a moister, more long-lasting baked product or an end result, but you can leave it out. I'm tossing it in because I'd like these to last a couple of days, even though they tend to vanish once they're on the plate. And that's it. Now once those guys are combined, you're going to take off your whisk, and we're going to set this aside. Now, the other thing is, with regard to traditional baking, people used to butter their pans. There's no need to butter your pan. We're just going to go ahead and hit this muffin tin with a little bit of a spray canola oil. This is one that's very good for high heat. It's actually referred to as a high heat canola oil. And just be careful not to get any of that on you. And all we're going to do is fill the muffin tins about 2/3 of the way full. And I like to get all of that good stuff out of the whisk because I don't like to waste any of my batter. Now, there are other things you can add to this. If you wanted to, you could throw in about 1/4 cup of chopped up walnuts. But I like to make these things pretty simple and straightforward so that they're crowd pleasers, so that if anyone were sensitive to nuts, it would be a non-issue. Just going to go ahead and fill the muffin tins with a heaping scoop. And again, no need to weigh or measure out exact, just eye it. And the other thing, again, about these muffins is that they are high in dietary fiber. So they wind up being something that's really great to toss into your backpack or take with you for after a yoga class. I know that for a fact that they tend to be something that does not hang around in my kitchen for a very long time. I've got friends that really enjoy this recipe because it's a way to sneak in a little bit of dark chocolate or the taste of chocolate if you're using the carob without really feeling very guilty. So the idea here is that you wind up with something that actually is a good-for-you muffin. You've got the potassium from the bananas, the fiber from the wheat bran and the wheat flour, and this little bit of kick from the caffeine-free vegan carob chocolate. So you're going to go ahead and bake these in an oven that's been preheated to 350 degrees. You're going to bake them for about 18 to 19 minutes. The only issue I've ever had with these muffins is I tend to take them out a little bit too soon. So be patient. It's worth waiting that extra minute until they puff up and they build a nice crown on top. So the great thing about the Good Morning muffins, just like all of the vegan baking that we'll be doing, is that they're great for anyone who's lactose intolerant or anyone who's looking to eat a dairy-free diet. Up next, we've got my orange chocolate agave nectar cupcakes with a chocolate mousse frosting. Now we're about to make my vegan orange chocolate agave nectar cupcakes. So what you need to do is preheat your oven to 325 degrees and line a muffin tin with cupcake liners. You can use any. I like the silver. They're a little bit more sparkly. And what we're going to do is take your soy milk. Now you can use soy milk or rice milk. Some people are sensitive to soy products, so rice milk can be substituted. So we're going to throw in apple cider vinegar into the soy milk. And you might say, why on earth, Anna Maria, would you put vinegar into your soy milk? Well, I'll tell you why. We're doing it with a little whisk. We're going to hit it with a little whisk, and we're going to set this aside to curdle. The reason we're doing this is traditional recipes for cakes and cupcakes tend to use buttermilk, which is very high in butterfat and would really not work with a dairy-free diet. So we're actually recreating buttermilk using soy or rice milk and apple cider vinegar. And if you don't have apple cider vinegar, you can use any vinegar. White distilled vinegar will do just fine. I'm going to set that aside. What you also need to do is zest. Take the zest off of one orange. We've already started doing that with this one here. And you could just use this little zesting tool that I love. It comes in very handy. And it smells so great. There's nothing like working with citrus and using the skin. That's really where the flavor comes from. People often say to me, oh, I'm actually surprised you're using the skin or the rind of the fruit as opposed to the juice. But the real intensity comes from the skin when working with citrus. Okay, so I'm just going to take that and set that aside. Okay, and now you're going to take your agave nectar. Now agave nectar is really the key ingredient to these cupcakes. Agave nectar has the consistency of honey. It's also an all-natural sweetener. So we're going to take our 2/3 of a cup of agave nectar and put it right into our stand mixer. And you don't want to waste it because it is a high-ticket item. So we're going to use the rubber spatula to scrape the extra into the bowl. You're going to take your canola oil, which is a heart-healthy, safe oil to work with, and your extracts. We've got almond, vanilla, and orange extracts, all three, which completely make this like this wonderful, complex-tasting cupcake. This says cupcakes have to be simple. They can be complex. So you're going to go ahead and beat those things together in your stand mixer. Okay, so you can go ahead now and you'll take your orange zest and you're going to throw that right on into the bowl. And now that your buttermilk, your vegan buttermilk, has curdled, you're going to throw that right on in. And it really does curdle up, which is pretty cool. And what that actually winds up doing is it gives your cakes and cupcakes a nice crumb, meaning when you break open the cake, it actually has that nice, moist, rich look to it. So you're going to beat that in. Okay, and again, this is not a really time-consuming recipe, but it definitely is a crowd pleaser. So we're going to go ahead and add our flour. Now I'm using cake flour. You can use any flour as long as it's not a bread flour. Also, I'm using organic flour, which is much better than, let's just say, stay away from any of the no-name flour that's in the market. You never know where it came from or what's in it. And then we've got our baking soda, baking powder, and salt. I'm using really fine sea salt for all my recipes. And lastly, we've got the 1/3 of a cup of cocoa powder. You're going to hit that again with your stand mixer. And you're going to scrape down the sides of the bowl with your rubber spatula. You should always keep a rubber spatula on hand. You'll never know when it'll come in handy. Scrape down the sides of the bowl and hit it again. The other thing that's really great about these vegan recipes is that if you have someone in the kitchen that would like to lick the bowl or lick the spatula, they can, because there is no threat of salmonella when baking with vegan recipes. Okay, that's it. We're going to take our batter. Again, you don't want to waste any of this batter because you'd like to be able to scrape it off into the bowl or have someone lick it. They can go ahead and go crazy on the whisk. You're going to take a large spoon and you're going to fill your cupcake liners just 2/3 of the way full. So you can either pour it in like I'm doing here and just use the spoon to kind of help things along. Or if you want to be super neat about it, you can measure out a couple of spoons at a time. So the other thing about agave nectar that I thought I'd like to mention, because I never knew what agave nectar was before I started cooking with vegan or baking with vegan recipes. Agave nectar actually comes from a plant, and it actually comes from a plant that's very much like a cactus, and it is actually called the agave plant. That's an interesting little tidbit about agave nectar. That's it. And don't worry if they're not all perfect, they'll puff up really nicely. You're going to see these cupcakes are just beautiful, left alone or topped off with the frosting, which we're going to make next, which is actually a chocolate mousse topping. So you're going to slide these into your oven that's been preheated to 325 degrees. And you're going to bake them 20 to 22 minutes. And the only other thing I'd say you should do is keep bamboo skewers on hand. You can use a toothpick if that's all you've got. But what you need to do is do not open the oven door before those 20 minutes have passed, at least 20 minutes. At that point, take a peek, see how you're doing, slide them out, stick in a skewer, and if it comes out completely clean, your cupcakes are cooked. So we're going to bake these guys up, and we're going to get started with our chocolate mousse topping. For the frosting, we're going to take a package of silken tofu, and silken tofu is actually the key ingredient to this frosting. By the way, you can also go ahead and just serve this chocolate mousse in a bowl by itself, but since we are making chocolate cupcakes, orange chocolate agave cupcakes, why not go crazy and bust out the chocolate mousse topping that we're making right now? So what you need to do is take the silken tofu. I've drained out as much of the excess liquid as I could, and I can see I've got a little bit extra, so you want to just go over to the sink and let some more of that go. It's not pretty, this part, but trust me, the end result is totally worth getting your hands a little dirty. So we're going to set that aside. And then what you need to do is take 12 ounces of any vegan dark chocolate. I found that there are certain brands that are really delicious. This one in particular yields a really rich chocolate taste. And I'm just going to go ahead and thwack it, break it down with a really sharp kitchen knife. The only other thing with any kitchen, whether your kitchen be a vegan kitchen or a traditional kitchen, you should always keep on hand at least one or two very sharp knives for all your chopping, slicing, and dicing. I'm practicing what I'm preaching finally. It's taken me years to get to this point where I could invest in a couple of good knives. And it doesn't need to be exact, but you just want to chop it up into small enough pieces. And what we've done is on your stovetop, you want to take a medium-sized saucepan, fill it with about 3 inches of water, and you've got that going with a large mixing bowl on top. And you're just going to take the chocolate, and we've created, in essence, a double boiler. People always think when they see a recipe that says that it calls for a double boiler that you need to go out and buy another fancy appliance. You need not. This is our double boiler, a mixing bowl on top of a large saucepan. So really, all you need to do is continuously stir it for 3 to 4 minutes, and then turn off the stove and let it sit for a few seconds while we get everything going in our food processor. Now what you're going to do is take your silken tofu and put it right into the food processor. Now the silken tofu really is what gives this mousse its structure. It's amazing. I've tried so many different vegan puddings over the years, and nothing has really turned out as well as when I work with the silken tofu. You're going to take your soy milk and your half a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Lastly, you're going to take 2 tablespoons of agave nectar. And if you don't have agave nectar left over from the other recipe, you can substitute maple syrup. I happen to think that I've become an agave nectar fan. So you're going to just throw that in. And what you need to do is close up your processor, and you're just going to pulse it a little bit. You really don't need to run it very long, but if you run it for just a few minutes, you'll be fine. So I'd say run it for about 1 minute at a time. So you're going to turn it off, and you're going to open up the top because you need full access. I'm taking off the lid as well. And what you need to do at this point is take your melted chocolate, and you're going to throw it right into the bowl with the silken tofu and all the other ingredients. It smells so good. It's incredible. So traditionally, when mousse is made, it's made with lots of raw eggs. And so this vegan version is really wonderful because it completely takes the salmonella factor out of the equation. And all you need to do is put your lid back on your processor and hit that one more time to combine everything. What you want to do with your chocolate mousse now is take it and refrigerate it for at least an hour. While that's chilling, you can go ahead and stage your cupcakes and get them ready because we're going to use a fancy piping tool to make them look really beautiful. What I've gone ahead and done is I've taken my chocolate mousse filling and I've put it into my fancy piping tool, which really is going to make a great end result. Visually, it's just really stunning, I think, when cakes and pastries are frosted. And taking a little bit of time now really yields a much nicer, crowd-pleasing end result. We're going to hit these cupcakes with our chocolate mousse topping. And really all you need to do is go ahead and give them each a good heaping squirt. You see how nicely that silken tofu holds up? I mean, it really gives a lot of structure and stability to these cupcakes. And that's it. Just a reminder that agave nectar is a low glycemic food. It's really wonderful if you're looking to prevent those sugar spikes in the afternoon. When you're looking for a snack, grab one of our cupcakes, agave nectar orange cupcakes. We're going to have my friend Olivia come in and taste these cupcakes with me. Would you like to come in and try one? This is Olivia's kitchen, so really her opinion matters a great deal to me. I'd like to know what you think. So how was that?
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Up next are my vegan lasagna rolls. I started making these vegan lasagna rolls because I was really frustrated with the lack of really delicious vegan and vegetarian lasagna recipes that are already out there. So what I've done to make mine a little bit different and a little bit more filling and substantial is I've incorporated baby bella or baby portobello mushrooms, organic tomato sauce. You can use any organic marinara sauce. You can even use your homemade if you like. A mixture of baby arugula and spinach, and vegan mozzarella, which is a great product. It's soy-based and it's really wonderful. It melts pretty well. We're going to go right ahead and start talking about our lasagna. So what we're doing with the lasagna itself is I like to use the traditional lasagna noodles that are the curly edged type, not the no boil lasagna. And what I've done for the recipe is I've gone ahead and boiled half a box of these lasagna noodles. And once they are drained, you want to lay out some parchment paper on a cookie sheet and layer them. Parchment, then your noodles, more parchment, and repeat until you get your tray lined up nicely. You're going to take a baking dish, and you want to go ahead and preheat your oven to 350 degrees at this point. So, the first step is to take a little bit of your tomato sauce and just get it into the baking dish. And you just want a little coating, not a lot, just to coat the bottom of the pan. And you're going to set the sauce aside because we're going to use it again later. Just a nice foundation. And one of the primary ingredients of the filling is the baby bella mushrooms. So we're going to go ahead and take about 10 ounces of the baby bella mushrooms. We chop them up coarsely, and now they're going right into the food processor. And we're going to go ahead and pulse them. You don't want to get it all mushy right away. You just want to break them up. So we're going to hit it. We're going to take our greens and we're going to add them to the mushrooms. Try to do half at a time so you give the food processor a break. You don't want to overdo it. So I'm going to do half and half. So now we're going to pulse once again to incorporate the greens into the baby bella mixture. You can go ahead and add the other half of the greens. Get everybody in there. And pulse them again. The next thing that's going to go into this recipe is one 14-ounce package of firm drained tofu. So we've taken it and we just kind of sliced it up into coarse, big chunks. We're going to add that to the portobello mushroom mixture. A lot of blending, a lot of breaking down to make this beautiful filling. You're going to want to take your spatula and scrape the sides of the bowls down. And you're just looking for any stray big chunk or big leaf that didn't get broken up properly. Give it a good stir. Hit it once again. You're going to go ahead and add your olive oil. And 3 minced cloves of garlic. It's really nice to have as many things ready to go when you start any recipe. This one in particular because it's got a lot of little ingredients, so it's nice to have a little prep time set aside for yourself. We've got a little bit of garlic powder, some fresh basil from my friend Amy's garden, and some fresh oregano from my friends Neil and Marcia. I'm going to take half of the parsley and throw it into the mix. And guess what? We're going to pulse it again. Let's set this aside and make some room. Again, we're talking about trying to create as little visual chaos as possible. That means also while you're preparing your foods. So planning is a key part of any of these recipes. Setting everything up and having everything ready to go. So you're going to take your mixture of the tofu and the baby bella mushrooms, and you want to always take your blade out first, especially when you're using a rubber spatula, because you don't want to go ahead and shove the spatula into the container. You'll wind up with shreds of rubber in your dish. So take out the blade, set it aside. We're going to transfer this to a large mixing bowl. So just like in traditional lasagna where you'd have a ricotta cheese filling with meat, the tofu here is the substitute for the cheese, which makes this a dairy-free dish. And again, I really thought that the addition of the baby bella mushrooms was something that really added a little something special to this dish. In addition, the mixture of both the baby arugula and the baby spinach really, I think, make this an outstanding vegan recipe. I'm going to add just a little bit of freshly ground black pepper and just a pinch of sea salt. And again, you're just going to mix that up. Now what we've got set aside here is some of this vegan, dairy-free mozzarella substitute. So what I've decided to do is to stack several of the slices up and just go ahead and slice it once and then turn it the other way and slice it again. So you're going to take your vegan mozzarella, coarsely chopped, and you're just going to drop it right into this mixture. You just really want to fold it in with a little bit more of that parsley. Folding that in. This is a really dense filling. Has a nice weighty feeling to it. And what we're going to do now is take a large tablespoon. So now we're going to make our lasagna rolls and actually construct them. So what we're going to do is take your baking pan with the layer of sauce and get it ready. Set aside all these other things that we don't need. Take your filling in a large tablespoon. You're going to take a heaping tablespoonful, a really, really big spoonful of the filling, and you're just going to set it down into the top of the noodles, one at a time. And this is a really fun recipe to put together, to actually construct. So if you have children in your house and they'd like to help, this is a really kid-friendly recipe. But grown-ups enjoy making them as well. So all you do is you take one end of the noodle and you're going to roll it up onto itself. It comes together really easily. You want to keep it tight, but not too tight. And you're just going to place that in the baking tray. And you're just going to repeat that process. Roll the lasagna over the filling onto itself. And place them onto the baking tray. Another really great benefit to this recipe is that we're using spinach, which is high in iron, and arugula, which is high in vitamins A and C. So this is not just a tasty dish, it is also very good for you. Filling, you won't be hungry after you have one of these. You'll feel satisfied, but you'll also feel good, which is a major point that we're trying to make with our recipes. They should taste good, they should be good for you, they should be pleasing to the eye. And that's it. You're just going to continue that process until you've used up all of your noodles or filled your baking tray. And now all you need to do is take some of your tomato sauce, just about a rounded or a heaping tablespoonful, and you're just going to place it right on top of each of the lasagna rolls. They're really, really cute. They're just adorable because each one is one portion. You think about how nice and neat this is to plate up, instead of a big sloppy mess. It's nice and neat and tidy. So once you get these guys all set, I've got my oven preheated to 375 degrees, and you're going to bake them for 25 to 30 minutes. One other thing you might want to try is covering this with a little bit of aluminum foil to protect your oven. So the last step is taking a little bit of parsley and topping off each of the rolls with just a little bit. It's beautiful. You see green, you see red, you see white. It's aromatic. And we're going to bake these guys up. To add a little bit of extra flavor, I sprinkled some of the extra vegan mozzarella on top of the rolls before they went into the oven. And here we are, vegan lasagna rolls. We're going to go ahead and plate these guys. And I'm telling you, these will even fool your dairy-loving friends. And now, I'm going to take a taste. That was really good. Up next is my carrot pineapple cake with vegan cream cheese frosting. This carrot cake recipe is really special because it contains pineapple, which makes it really juicy and moist. Also, we're using a vegan cream cheese substitute, so you're able to enjoy a cream cheese frosting taste without all the guilt and without the dairy. We're going to start off by taking our carrots. I'm using baby carrots because they're already clean and ready to go. It takes one of the prep steps out of the way. Throw them into your food processor, and we're going to give them a good hard pulse. You need them to be finely chopped or finely shredded, so let them rip. I'm going to pop off the lid and let that sit for a moment. And we're going to prep our pineapple. Now, with this recipe, it's really best to work with a fresh pineapple. And if you can, go to your market and look for a pineapple that looks like it's kind of moist on the outside. Also, when you look at your pineapple, you'll see that sometimes the bottom is a little bit darker. That's a good ripe pineapple. That means all the sugar is settled in the bottom. So what we've done was we set this pineapple upside down in the refrigerator for 30 minutes, upside down, so that the sugar went from the bottom to the top, so that all the pieces, when we chop them, will be even with regard to sugary taste. So all you're going to do in prepping a pineapple, I always thought working with a real pineapple was going to be really difficult, and it's actually not. Just going to go ahead and lay your pineapple down, have a good sharp kitchen knife on hand. Use a cutting board. Do not attempt to slice this on your counter. So all you need to do is grab your pineapple and twist off the top. It comes right off. Sometimes it requires a little more effort, but you're going to have to wiggle with it. If it pops right off like that, you know you're dealing with a really great ripe pineapple. You're going to set it on its side, and you're going to slice off both ends. Set those pieces aside. Next, you're going to go all the way around, slicing off the skin. Pineapple is so juicy, and it's so sweet. You could just smell it when you slice it open. And this is really the key ingredient to this carrot cake. It makes it kind of into a really special tropical dessert. Scrape everything aside and take a look. And you want to make sure that your pineapple doesn't have any of those brown divots. If you've got anything left over, just peel it off or slice it off. I'm just going to go ahead and slice it into big chunks. They need not be even here. Okay. These are going into the food processor. So we're just going to take about half of that pineapple and throw them right inside with the carrot that's already shredded. And once again, we're going to combine that with the shredded carrot. Sometimes you need to stop and scrape down the sides of the bowl. Or if the pieces of pineapple were a little bit too big, you need to help them out by pushing them into the center of the processor. I get a little excited when I'm working with pineapple, so I was really eager to get them into the bowl. Scraping down the sides of the bowl, and once again, you're going to pulse these guys. You're going to set that aside. We're going to take our ground flaxseed and put it into the water. And once again, I get to use my favorite tiny little whisk. You would just want to incorporate the flax in the water and set it aside so that the flax has time to soak up the water. And it swells up. And once again, when working with the ground flax is really high in fiber, so that's a good thing. The carrots are also high in fiber. Set that aside. And that actually is our egg substitute for this dairy-free cake. I'm going to take some of our dry ingredients and get that going. And take your wheat flour, put it into your stand mixer. I've mixed my wheat bran with my turbinado sugar. The wheat bran is really important in terms of making this a more healthful dessert. Don't tell anyone, it's actually good for you. This cake is actually healthy. You're going to take your baking soda, baking powder, and salt. You're just going to stir that once to combine the dry ingredients. This recipe goes together so easily, and it's a really impressive end result, and it's really delicious. You're going to take some of the wet ingredients now. You're going to add the applesauce, which again makes this a really moist, wet, almost sticky cake when you cut into it. Your vanilla extract. And lastly, we're going to take our carrot and pineapple combo, removing the blade. I'm always really cautious with these blades. They are sharp. Take your rubber spatula, scrape down the carrot, pineapple mixture, and it's going to be chunky, and that's okay. Those are like kind of little surprises that you bite into when you take a slice of this cake. Put your whisk back on and give it a whirl. Okay. You want to shake off the excess from the whisk. Just go ahead and thwack it. You're going to take an 8 to 10 inch diameter round pan. It can be square if that's what you have on hand, but I like to use my old trusty pan that's seen a lot of action. You're going to hit it with a little spray canola oil, and you want to be pretty generous. With that canola. Whew. I'm going to take your rubber spatula and go ahead and scrape that mix into your cake pan. We're going to bake this cake for 40 minutes at 350 degrees. And while that's baking up, we're going to prep our vegan cream cheese frosting. Now we're ready to make our frosting. The key ingredient to this frosting is our cream cheese substitute. You're going to go ahead and take 8 ounces and put it right on into your stand mixer using a rubber spatula. And it's very, very thick. It's actually thick like one of the Neufchâtel cheeses that you find. It's got a really, really great rich taste, very similar in texture to actual cream cheese, but of course this is a dairy-free product. You've got 1/3 of a cup of soy milk. You can also substitute rice milk. I'm combining a little bit of almond extract and vanilla extract. It gives the frosting a little bit more of a complexity. And about 2 tablespoons full of your soy butter alternative. We're going to whip these guys up in the stand mixer. I'm going to remove the whisk, set it aside, and bring on over some confection sugar. Now, I'm using about 4 cups of confectioner's sugar today. Depending on the humidity with regard to where you live or the time of year, you may have to use a little bit less or a little bit more. I'm going to put the whisk back on and give it a whirl. And that's it. I'm going to transfer this to a bowl. And if you want to, at this point, you can have someone in the kitchen come on in and lick the beater because, as we've mentioned with our other vegan recipes, this is completely safe, dairy-free, salmonella-free. Take that frosting, transfer it to a clean bowl, and you're going to need to refrigerate this so that you chill it for at least an hour. I'd say the longer you chill it, the better the end result. Look at that. That is just really rich and beautiful and creamy, just like a traditional cream cheese frosting. Without the buttermilk fat, no cholesterol, no guilt. You're going to cover that, set it aside. We're going to check on our cake, which has been baking at 350 degrees. And the most important part would be, in checking doneness, I like to take either a toothpick or a bamboo skewer and stick it into the center of the cake and see that it comes out clean. Once the cake comes out of the oven, you need to allow it to sit and become room temperature so you can handle it. We're going to set it down, take our serving platter, and flip that cake over. There you go. And now we're ready to frost. So what I've gone ahead and done is I gave this a crumb coat, and I've only learned recently about crumb coating cakes. Crumb coat is the first really thin coat of frosting that you spread on so that it picks up all the crumbs and makes a good mess. Then you stick it back in the fridge and you chill it for about another 20 to 30 minutes before you frost it with the final coating, which we've done here. Now you can go ahead and serve it just as it is. It's delicious, but for presentation and to add a little extra richness and more fiber, as if we can't get enough fiber in these recipes, I'm going to add a little bit of crushed up walnuts, and you're just going to go ahead and sprinkle them right on top. It does make a nicer presentation, which is such a key part to everything that we're making. It should taste good, it should be pleasing to the eye. And go ahead, I like a lot of walnuts on my cake, so I'm going to be pretty generous with our distribution. That really dresses it up, I think. What do you think? And I've got a really pretty little flower from my friend Amy's garden. Just gonna top that off. There you are, my vegan pineapple carrot cake with our cream cheese frosting, dairy-free and delicious. This next recipe is the dish that I prepare each year for my Chinese New Year parties. So we're going to go ahead and take a few leaves of boiled bok choy. And bok choy is a really delicious, healthy vegetable. You can find it in your local grocery store where they keep the cabbage, like next to the Napa cabbage. Bok choy is rich in calcium, vitamins A and C. So I've boiled about 4 leaves of bok choy and drained out the excess liquid. We're going to take it, put it into the food processor. And you want to work with it once it's at room temperature. You can also run it under cold water if you have to expedite things. And you just need to hit that until it's ripped up into small bits. That was quick. You're going to go ahead and add about half of a package of firm tofu. And you need to rinse it and take the excess liquid out of the package. So you want to drain it in a colander, half a package of firm tofu, right on in there. And pulsing again. Just a second. And you're going to take about an inch of freshly ground ginger. You don't need to peel it, but some people like to take the skin off. I like to leave the skin on. I think it gives you a little extra fiber. So you're just throwing the ginger in there. I got about a tablespoonful of soy sauce and about 1 teaspoonful of sesame oil. A little pinch of sea salt, the finer the better. And about 1/4 teaspoonful of white pepper. White pepper really gives it a little bit of kick. And we're just going to pulse that once more to incorporate. You're going to take it out of the food processor, and with a rubber spatula, you're going to scrape the filling into a medium-sized mixing bowl. These are so incredibly easy to put together, and they really knock your socks off. I usually make a big tray of these for the Chinese New Year party each year, and they are the first dish to go. You don't need to wait for a special occasion to make these. You can whip them up any night of the week, as long as you've got the ingredients on hand. You're going to slice about 3 or 4 scallions, cutting off the ends, keeping some of the white part, because we're going to make a really delicious dipping sauce. It's got soy sauce, ginger, and scallions. When people hear dipping sauce, they think it's something very fancy and difficult, but it's the most simple thing to make that will accompany these dumplings. Okay, you set those aside. Now this is where it gets really exciting. I'm going to take a cookie tray, some parchment paper, and a small bowl with a little bit of water. Set aside your wonton skins. You take a really sharp kitchen knife and take your parchment paper. Usually it comes in these big sheets. And you need to slice it right down the middle. You need 1 sheet for the bottom and 1 sheet to cover the wontons as you go so that you keep them moist. You're going to lay out the skins. And they're really paper thin. And they're such a wontons are really a beautiful item to work with. So all you need to do is lay them out on top of the parchment. And you want to work in pretty small batches so that they don't dry out. You're going to need to take teaspoon. And all you're going to do is take the tip of the teaspoon and scoop out, maybe I'd say a little bit less than a 3/4 of a teaspoonful of the filling. And you're going to put it into the center bottom half of each skin. You just slide it off with your finger. And this happens every time I make these guys. I get so caught up in the process of actually folding them up into little wontons. It really becomes like a moving meditation. The process of constructing these is really great. And you'll amaze your friends. And they'll think that you worked all day on these guys. The other thing you might want to take into consideration is if you are having some kind of a function or gathering or serving a large crowd, that there's an expression that goes, many hands make light work. You can enlist the help of a family member or a friend when you get to the part where you're actually filling them. Okay, at this point you should take your steamer. Now I'm using a bamboo steamer. I really love the taste that you get from working with a bamboo steamer, but you can go ahead and use a colander over a large pot of water, just like you use when you make a double boiler in your kitchen. But if you can, go online or find a local market that carries bamboo steamers. They really add a little extra something to the dish. You're going to turn on about 3 inches of water in the bottom of your pot and set the steamer on top and get that ready. You're going to hit it with a spray of a little high intensity or high heat canola oil, being careful to stay away from your flame. And here is the magic part. You're going to take a little bit of water. You're just going to take a little bit of that water onto the tip of one of your fingers. I work with my ring finger. Very little bit of water goes a long way. And you're going to just trace out the edges of 1 or 2 wontons at a time. And then you're going to fold the skin toward you, pressing to seal, working from one end at a time, squeezing out as much of the excess air as possible. Dip your finger again, wetting one corner, pull it together, and turn up the end like the brim of a hat. That's the magic of making a wonton. Really that little hat trick, I guess I would call it. So you're just going to repeat that same process. Folding it toward you, pressing out the extra air, dipping your finger once again, taking that one corner, pressing it onto the other, and turning up the edge like the brim of a hat. Looks like the flying nun. Looks like a nun's habit. A vegan nun. So you're just going to repeat this process until you've done all of your skins. You can also go ahead and cover the filling if you just want to make a small portion. Put it in the refrigerator. It can be refrigerated up to 3 or 4 days if you seal it tightly in a Tupperware in your fridge. Also, you can make these wontons ahead without steaming them. As long as they're covered in an airtight container, you can keep them refrigerated for up to a week. We don't like to freeze things when we're working with Ayurvedic techniques, so I would say do not freeze them. Try to make them fresh if possible. And I'm just going to go ahead and finish these guys up. Now that you've got your wontons all formed, you're going to go ahead and place them right onto your steamer. You don't want them to touch, but you can nestle them pretty closely together inside your basket, or as I said to you earlier, if you're using a colander, as long as you've coated the inside with a little spray canola cooking oil. And you can use a lid or the bottom of a cookie sheet or a pizza pan to cover the colander, which is what I did for many years before I found my bamboo steamer. That's it. You're going to put on your lid. You're going to steam these guys for about 4 to 5 minutes. You know that they're done when the skins are translucent and you can see the filling. While those guys are steaming, we're going to go ahead and prep our bok choy that we're searing on the side. So you're going to take a small frying pan. And I like to work with the center leaves of the bok choy because they tend to be the most firm. The outer leaves you can take apart and set aside and compost in your yard. So you're going to take the smallest leaves because they also make the nicest presentation. And I'm using about a teaspoonful of high quality olive oil. You can use a little bit more if you like. And you're just going to heat that up in your pan. You can tilt the pan to coat. You don't want your bok choy sticking. And you're just going to go ahead and place the leaves right into the pan. You're going to crank that heat. And you just want to coat them with olive oil and get it to the point where they're starting to sizzle up a little. So you don't want to overcook your veggies. I think one of the things that turned me off to vegetables earlier in my life is that I was eating them in a well-cooked state or an overcooked state. So I learned later in life that it's really best not to overcook your vegetables. It really starts to sizzle, so be careful. Look for splattering oil. You don't want to get that on your skin. You're just going to turn them over. There we go. Ah, you're making some magic. I'm just going to take this one big guy out for presentation. Put him back in. Some of the smaller leaves are really nice for garnish. Also, they make a really great presentation. Those teeny little leaves are my favorite ones. Okay, I'm going to set that aside for a second, and we're actually going to hook up our dipping sauce. So all you need is to take a pretty little bowl. With regard to presentation, in Ayurveda, everything is presentation, or presentation is everything when we're using the Ayurvedic principles. So find pretty little bowls and take out your good dishes. Don't save your good dishes for a special occasion. Try to make every meal a special occasion if possible. I'm going to take some of those scallions that we chopped up earlier. Throw them right into the soy sauce. So again, if you're using a shallow dish, about 4 teaspoonfuls or 2 tablespoons full of soy sauce, a handful of your chopped scallions, and with a grating tool, I'm just going to grate a little bit more ginger right into the container. Ginger is so wonderful. It's also really good for having on hand if you've got a bellyache. You can just pull it out of the refrigerator, grate a little bit into a cup of hot water and sip it like a tea. Excellent for digestion. I'm just going to stir that up a little. And there's your magic, fancy schmancy dipping sauce. We're going to take the bok choy out of the pan. Ooh. And serve it alongside the wontons. Oh yeah, that's just beautiful. Ooh. A little bit of magic when that starts to sizzle. That's it. You're going to serve it up alongside your dumplings. Hopefully you've got some chopsticks on hand. Take your chopsticks, grab a wonton, dip it into that sauce, and enjoy. Really easy, really rewarding for Chinese New Year or any night of the week. My vegan wontons and seared bok choy. For our next dish, we're going to prepare an Ayurvedic berry compote. Now, a compote consists of any combination of fruits cooked in a simple syrup. So what we're going to do is just take anything that you've got on hand in your kitchen. You can use apples, pears, and any combination of berries. So in our compote, what we're using, some red delicious apples, some blueberries, some red raspberries, and some blackberries. In addition, we're using some golden raisins. You can use any raisins. You could substitute currants if you like, as opposed to raisins, or dates. So we're going to take one red delicious apple, and you're just going to slice it up into small pieces. Now, it can be cubed, it can be diced. You're going to leave the skin on, because leaving the skin on actually makes this dish higher in fiber. So think about that whenever you're preparing anything that has chopped fruit or apples or pears. Leaving the skin on the fruit makes the dish higher in dietary fiber. So we're going to go ahead and turn on our burner. You want to take a small saucepan, And we're going to take just about a teaspoonful of a soy butter substitute. Put that right into the pan. Right away, straight away, you're going to add your red delicious apples. Your raisins. A little bit of apple juice. Some cinnamon and some nutmeg. Now, if you only have cinnamon on hand and not nutmeg, you can leave one or the other out. I happen to think cinnamon really makes this dessert treat shine. You're going to take your rubber spatula and just stir to combine. And you can reduce that to about a low to medium flame. Okay, once that's gotten going, you're going to set aside your berries. Now again, we talked about using any combination of berries that you have on hand. Also, think about using any seasonal fruit that might be in season locally from your farmer's market. And really, you're only going to wind up cooking the apples and the raisins down for 1 to 2 minutes. This is not a really cooking intense preparation. It's just more about combining everything and getting the spices in there. But once you see that it's starting to kind of stick and make a little bit of a congealed bottom in the pan, you can add just a little bit more of that apple juice. And the only other thing I'd say would be that you need to stir this continuously so that nothing sticks to the bottom of the pan. Now you're going to shut the heat, and you're going to add 2 tablespoons of maple syrup, or you can use 2 tablespoons of agave nectar. Give that a stir. It smells really, really great. Now if it gets too dry at any point, you can always add a little bit more of your apple juice, and I am using organic apple juice. You can even keep a couple of kids' juice boxes on hand so that you can use a little bit at a time. And the last step, I'm going to take my raspberries and mix them in. And again, we're looking to make our dishes visually appealing, and this is definitely something that I happen to think is a very pretty dish. So once we've stirred everything and combined the red raspberries in with our base, I'm going to go ahead and take a nice piece of stemware, and you can use a martini glass, you can use a margarita glass. I've just got this kind of pretty wine glass here today. I'm going to start off by layering. And here we're going to put a little bit of what we've just made with the red delicious apples and the red raspberries in the bottom layer. Hit it with some blueberries. Layer on some more of the red delicious apple base. Oh my God, this smells so good. Wow. Some of the blackberries. And lastly, top it off once again with a little bit more of the apples and raspberries. And get a little bit of that sauce in there, because the syrup is really what pulls it all together. You might want to take a little sprig of mint and stick it on top. Makes a nice presentation. And if you'd like, you could have a little bit of a soy yogurt dolloped on top, but I think that all by itself it makes a great presentation. And it tastes really great too. So that's it, Ayurvedic berry compote. If you have questions you'd like to submit for our next video, send them to info@anaveda.com. Thank you so much for joining me. Now go have fun in your kitchen.